I want you to imagine a scenario for me. You've walked out of the woods and your phone is dead. Hordes of villagers chase you, out for blood. But you've been here before. You know what to do. You climb the tower. But then crash! The floor breaks out from under you. You're surrounded by villagers. In a panic, you sprint away. You fight them back, barely getting the situation under control.
What's your leg? Ah, it's caught in a bear trap.
This is Resident Evil 4 Remake, baby! The latest to be churned out by Capcom, and one that takes full advantage of what it means to be a remake. My name's Joel, I'm a game designer, and on today's GBU reviews, we'll talk about how the RE4 remake plays on your previous experience to enhance the tension and terror, why some of the changes with the best intentions end up detracting from the game, and how, if I were on the team, I would have made sure Leon is always ready for the action. Fingers crossed this remake is better than the botched attempt that was Resident Evil 3's remake. It's time to see where RE4 stacks up.
Well, Mo, now we see if you go on my wall of fame or my blooper reel.
Every remake has a fantastic opportunity that most studios squander. As designers, we try so hard to predict and guide player behavior. Even after a game comes out, we collect metrics to inform our future decisions, either improving the game through patches or using those learnings for the sequel. So when a game comes out that's a shot-for-shot remake of the original, I tend to hate it. Not only because it's a waste of an opportunity, but because if I wanted to play the original, I probably could. So when producer Yokiyashi Hirabayashi spoke in interviews about betraying the expectations of players in a good way, I was excited to see what could come out of the Resident Evil 4 remake. Their team has completely rebuilt the game and its environments. Macro changes have the layouts of locations feeling more natural. There's no more going off on a random chairlift to fight Mendez. Instead, there's a new chase sequence where Mendez is hunting you before his boss fight. And on the micro side, there are new pathways to run circles around the Ganados. The game feels familiar, but it's changed just enough to make you go,
I have no memory of this place.
Enemy spawn positions have changed as well. In the original, I knew where the first dog encounter was, but in the remake, the villagers went,
Release the hounds. Well, neighbor, I see you've got your running shoes on. That's a good thing.
which is fantastic. Scaring a player is about building tension, and that's a lot easier to do if they're not expecting what's coming. Except for maybe jump scares. Those suck even when you know they're coming. Like the jump scare I'm about to put on screen in 3, 2, 1. Did you tense up? This is exactly what I want from a remake. It's the closest you'll get to experiencing Resident Evil 4 for the first time again. If you try and fight it and rely on some of your old strategies, Mr. Hirabayashi and his team will punish you for it too. Hiding in the tower during the opening village fight will get you killed this time out. And these types of moments that play on past experiences are amazing, which is why I'm using the tower example twice, because they're at their best when you experience them for yourself, and they catch you off guard. But the Resident Evil 4 remake doesn't just take away your old strategies, it's taken every aspect of the game and tried to improve it. There are new weapons, the god-awful QuickTime events have been removed, you no longer have to open up the attaché case every time you want to swap weapons, and there's no pop-up for everything you pick up, so the pace of play is faster and it feels so much nicer. Areas players hated from the original, like the notorious waterhall, which was the bane of speedrunners' existence, have been tweaked. You no longer have to stand on some button waiting on enemies to walk through a door. The waterhall is also smaller, making it easier to defend Ashley, especially as she runs to the cranks you've boosted her to. Speaking of Ashley, she's not nearly as annoying as she was in the original. She feels like a real person now. There was only one time I got annoyed at her, and I think I had a pretty good reason for that.
Goddamn you, woman! You fucking stabbed me!
There are definitely reasons not to like the remake. I alluded to the fact that the game is a lot better at scaring players, and the devs leaned into that. Everything is darker, there's legitimately scary moments, but this all comes with a slight sacrifice to the campy B-movie feel that the original had. There's still some one-liners in there, but the bad guys never hack Leon's communication in this one, so we miss out on some of the original's best conversations. We do get to see Luis fleshed out more, and he's a great character, but your enjoyment of the game might be affected by how you find the new tone. The cons may outweigh the pros for your personal taste. There's a great example of what to expect in this new outing right in the opening cutscene of the game. Instead of being Leon in the car with the police officers, that part's still there, we have a new first cutscene, where you'll see the cultists performing a ritual, and it goes something like this. Decapitation! I like the new direction, and I'm happy to play both versions of the game. What I'm less excited about seeing in the game is the knife durability changes. In horror games, it's important to ensure that a player feels threatened by the enemies, otherwise they aren't scared. Especially in indie games, you'll find that this is often accomplished by not letting players fight back. In games like Resident Evil, it's done through managing the player's inventory. In most games, when you break open a box or open a chest to collect loot, the game will analyze the state before deciding what to drop. We do this with things called loot tables. It gives percentage odds and uses rules to decide what can and can't be dropped to the player at any given time. In Resident Evil, the rules are usually, if the player is low on ammo, increase the odds of dropping ammo. If the player is low on health, drop health. If the player isn't holding a sniper rifle, avoid dropping sniper ammo. If everything is fine, drop gold. Not all items in games are randomized through loot tables, but you'll notice this a lot while playing Resident Evil 4 Remake. Health items drop like candy when you're almost dead. This is a difficult balancing act to pull off well. And as it stands, in the remake, I found myself painfully low on ammo more often than I'd like to mention. In the original, it wasn't a problem, because if you ever ran out of ammo, you could always rely on your knife. But in the remake, your knife can break, which means it's possible to end up completely defenseless. This can, and for a lot of people on the internet, has resulted in the possibility of being soft-locked. Soft-locked, for those who aren't familiar with the term, is when a game is still technically playable, but realistically it's impossible to make any forward progress. And in Resident Evil 4 Remake, there are certain areas in the game where you have to fight. Get to one of those spots with your knife broken and no ammo, and all you can do is watch the enemies carry Ashley away while Leon watches like an idiot.
Now about you finding new work. That's gonna be tough.
More broccoli?
Because you're, I don't know, let's face it, you're no spring chicken. And I mean that in the best possible way.
Thankfully, I never got softlocked, but I was also smart enough to keep multiple save files as I went through the game. I came close to unwinnable situations plenty of times. In this fight I'm showing right now, I killed the final enemy with my literal last bullet. If I missed, I'd have to watch him slowly walk away with Ashley, unable to even punch him. Fixing the softlock issue should be easy, right? If we keep the regular knife, we'd be fine. And yes, while that is going to end up being my suggestion to fix the game, it's important that we understand why designers make the decisions they do. Remember, we want to build tension in a horror game, and our knives in the remake play a much larger role than they did in the original. In this game, they can do stealth kills, but most importantly, they can parry. So why were those functions added, and why is it such a big deal? In the original game, Leon handled like a tank. Moving was awkward, and part of what made regular enemies threatening was that they could easily swarm you. In the remake, the regular enemies can still swarm you, but in order for them to match your mobility, they also have to be faster. Then in the original game, there were plenty of instant kill attacks, like those from the chainsaw enemies. If the regular enemies are faster, it stands to reason that we have to make these powerful foes faster as well. If a player is ever caught between a chainsaw guy or 10 villagers, they should want to take their odds with the villagers, not try and outmaneuver a single slow enemy. That's what makes these powerful foes scary. They're the ones you need to pay attention to and track during a fight. Everything else is just fodder. With all the added speed, the parry mechanics are here to act as a limited use get out of jail free card against these scary enemies. Now, if you're not facing the correct way, they'll backstab you without giving you the option to parry, so they're still threatening. But if players had infinite uses on their knife, all of a sudden we've removed too much of the tension during the game's big set-piece battles. So I can understand how the devs landed on their system of knife durability. I just personally think the threat of being soft-locked is a bigger issue. So, if I were on the team, I'd make a few changes. First, Leon's basic knife would be the weakest of all knives in the game. Any knife upgrades you bought would apply to all knives, not just Leon's base knife. The big difference between Leon's knife and the knives you found would be that Leon's knife can't be used to parry. Now, this isn't an ideal solution, because anytime similar items behave differently, players will get confused or call bullshit on their deaths. But that's part of the problem with these videos. I have to guess at what might work without being able to actually test it. I think that with proper UI and maybe even adding a unique death animation where Leon's knife breaks while he's trying to parry, we could make it work. But it's all just guesswork. Oh, and I'd also remove knives as a component to crafting arrows, but that's a smaller issue. I love this game. It doesn't replace the original, and the version you prefer will come down to a lot of different factors. If you like the campy aspects of the first and want villains to be more like this,
and if we let him be someone else without our help,
you'll probably like the original more. But if you like the smoother controls and graphics of modern games, and especially if you prefer the horror side of action horror, you might just enjoy the remake more. The remake is at its absolute best if you're someone who's played the original more times than they can count, because that's when the subversive tricks that the devs do will have the greatest impact. And even though you can get softlocked, the devs are trying to look out for you. The game will actually prevent you from dying from most attacks if your health wasn't in the red.
Present for you.
I just wish the devs cared about my inventory as much as they cared about my health. Whichever version you end up liking best, one thing remains the same. Resident Evil 4 sits atop the throne as the best game in the Resident Evil franchise.